it's funny, being a religious scholar sometimes comes with a few issues. One of them is watching television or movies and seeing things that I just know wouldn't happen. One of them is this. They're at the Missionary Baptist Church, whatever the characters are, and then there's a crucifix, right? And crucifixes are not very often found in Baptist churches because they believe that it should be a symbol of the resurrection, so Jesus should not be on the cross. Crucifixes tend to be more Episcopalian or Catholic. And it bothers me when they get these things wrong, right? Or they'll be, talking about church, and then they say something about, it's just they never get it right. And it bothers me. It bothers me a great deal. There was a television show called Alias with Jennifer Garner that I used to watch, and what was funny is I'm watching them and they're doing a funeral, and they come down the stairs, and of course I was watching this in seminary with my seminary friends, and we're like, that's our book of worship. And we knew, it's about, it turns out Jennifer Garner is United Methodist, so that's why it was there, but they still got it wrong. And then they had this episode of Judging Amy where they were having a baptismal discussion about having the babies baptized, and they kept saying, christening the babies, and I'm like, we don't do christenings. Christenings can get you fired. I could be defrocked for doing a christening. We do baptisms. We do infant baptism. Get it right. And then they said, and then we'll ask you, do you renounce Satan? That's Roman Catholic. We say to resist evil, injustice, and oppression in all the ways that it presents itself. You're getting it wrong. So if they can get something so wrong as the nature of the very universe itself, one thing they also get equally wrong, if not more wrong, is fatherhood. Every dad you have out there in the world somewhere, and all the fathers and father-like, they all have a smattering of gifts and abilities, right? And those gifts and abilities, they're not always the same, are they? I know men who have never cooked a single meal their entire lives, and yet my father was the one who taught me to cook, right? That's because he had that skill, right? He grew up in a household of 10. And he knew if he didn't cook, he wasn't going to eat, right? Mom was too busy, right? It was just a thing. It was something that he learned because of life's circumstances. And one thing that they never seem to get right in contemporary media today is they never seem to get dads right. And so I named my sermon, even though I don't like the word, Stupid Dads of Myth and Legend. Because doesn't it seem that when we see dads depicted on television, they are always relatively useless? They seem to be the last ones to get the joke, even though my dad is the first one to tell a joke, right? They hold the baby as if it's a bomb, right? As if they've never seen a baby before. And then the moment comes when, unfailingly, there's some sort of moment where the men are watching sports and the baby's sitting there in its own filth and they're not doing anything about it. I do not know a father out there who would allow such a thing. In fact, a few years ago, Huggies came up with this commercial campaign. I'd like to share it with you now, actually. It's not too long. We have a video of it. With sound. We'll restart it over.
To prove Huggies diapers and wipes can handle anything,
Let's
we
restart.
put them to the toughest test imaginable. Dads, alone with their babies, in one house, for 5 days. We gave moms some well-deserved time off. How did Huggies products hold up to daddyhood? The world is about to find out. Good luck, babe.
A lot of people didn't find it funny. They didn't find it funny because it does sort of presume that the hardest things that Huggies have ever had to deal with are dads. Really? Really? Fathers is the biggest problem that Huggies have ever had to deal with. And they were going to do a series of commercials following these fathers for the 5 days, but the response was so immediate and so powerful. This idea that the fathers of the world were so inept that they could not care for their children, when the reality is, in 2018 at the time, and 2019 now, many fathers are staying home with their children while their wives go out and work. The reality is, the ability to change a diaper has nothing to do with your gender, and everything to do with your particular skill set. Some people can, some people can't. And as I was talking with actually Kate and Heather a couple weeks ago, they actually said to me, you know, I hate it when people say, oh, is my husband home babysitting? No, he's at home caring for our children. He's not a babysitter, he's their father. And this idea that we have in our culture that the dads are so incredibly inept, I truly believe it hurts the family. I truly believe it hurts because in some ways, for certain people, for certain fathers, it releases them from the responsibility. Oh no, dads aren't supposed to change the diapers. We're supposed to be completely inept about that. Here's how my life was with my dad. Now, when we were younger, my dad used to work third shift. But for a while there, he worked second shift, which means that he would be home in the afternoon. And during that time, and my mother didn't work for a certain period of time in my life. And so during that time, Dad would teach my brother things that were traditionally male roles. He would teach him to fix the lawnmower and all those things. Then something changed, and my mother went back to work, and my father started working third shift, which means that he would sleep during the day, and then I'd get home at 3, and sometime around 4 he would wake up. He would come down, and then he would teach me the skills that were appropriate for that time of the day. So I'll tell you, I cannot change oil. I can't. My brother learned that because of how life circumstances were. I didn't get to learn that. But I'll tell you one thing, I can make you a mean taco salad. And my potato soup has been known to make people cry, I'll tell you the truth. Because those were the skills that my father taught me based on life's circumstances. And the reality is, every single one of us have families that have to deal with things every other day, and we have things that we struggle with to see and to get done. And the reality is, the skills that we learn are sometimes just left up in the air. And it doesn't matter what your gender is. What matters is that we have the skills to get through our lives. And it seems so painful to me to watch in sitcoms and television these continual representations of inept fathers. Have you ever seen, there's a Doritos commercial out there that pictures, that has a father, and he's supposed to be watching over the newborn baby, but instead he's eating Doritos and watching sports, and the newborn baby, meanwhile, is climbing out of the crib and all these things to get to the Doritos. And the concept, which is hilarious, by the way, but the concept that he's going to be so inept that he doesn't even notice that his child is in danger, you'd never see that depiction with a mother. And all of this came to a head for me when I read a testimony just last week. And it was a story written by a father in Christianity Today. And he wrote about Father's Day. And he said, when my wife and I attended this large church with lots of children's ministry for our children, he said, and Mother's Day rolled around, and he said they honored mothers, and they gave them a little ribbon to wear when they came in. And they had pictures of women as super women doing all kinds of amazing things. He said, I just loved that they were honoring my wife in this way because she is an amazing person. He said, and as he watched this, he thought, well, man, I wonder what they're going to do on Father's Day. And so the next month rolls around, and he said, I couldn't help it, I was a little bit excited. And he walked in, and there were no ribbons, there was nothing, and the service began. And the sermon was all about how fathers across the nation are failing their children and their wives. And then at the penultimate moment of the service, he and all the other men were instructed to get down on their knees in front of their wives and ask their forgiveness for their many failures. He said, from that moment on, my wife and the children attended that church because they had a children's ministry that they were a part of, but I went to the local Episcopal church from that moment on. He said in many ways it broke his heart because he recognized the fact that he wasn't a perfect father, that he wasn't always perfect, that he wasn't always doing the right thing, And he wanted to. You know, we all want to. We all want to be the best we can be, but we can't be our best all the time, can we? And he said, and yes, there were many things that I needed to ask my wife's forgiveness for, but I just needed that one day to give me the strength to kind of continue with the rest of it, you know? Why do we do this to one another? And men are not the only ones, but why do we do this to our women as well? Why do we have to spend so much time judging each other? Oh, it's on. I didn't reach in to turn it off. Oh, it's dead. Testing, 1, 2, 3, there we go. I didn't turn it on, I didn't reach in there or anything. Okay, wait. Where are we going? Let's see, I was talking about, why do we spend so much time judging people? Oh, you use formula? We breastfed. It's better for the children. Oh, your husband stays at home and doesn't go to work. My husband goes to work. He's a painter. I have a friend, one of my best friends actually, his name's Chris Tiedemann. And he and his wife adopted their first 3 children, and then they had 2 natural born children. But one of the children that they adopted, his name was Carter. Carter was adopted, and he had cerebral palsy, which means a lot of things to a lot of different people. What had happened is that the birth mother had passed out while giving birth. The baby that was stuck in the birth canal wasn't able to breathe and caused tremendous brain damage to the baby. As the story of Carter's life continues, it was a story of even abrasive fabrics, a sound, caused this baby incredible pain. For the first year, the baby only slept 2 hours a night. Screamed and cried most of the time, and every so often they'd have a nice moment where he laughed. And during that time, Emily watched over the baby constantly, and Chris was taking very good care of the baby and care of his family. And they had to so many times be at the hospital, and they had so many surgeries, and they had so many moments where they were trying to take care of this baby. And then they finally got the news that the baby's brain was no longer able to keep the heart beating, and they had only a few weeks to live. So their church, the church that he served, took together a collection. They found a timeshare condominium in Florida, because one thing that Carter liked, one thing that gave him strength and a way to live, was he loved to swim. And so a local biker gang raised funds, and they sent the family to Florida for 3 weeks. And he said the greatest moment of his life was when he watched his wife carry this little boy into the ocean. And I've seen the video. I thought about bringing it today, but I don't think we have enough Kleenexes. So I will post it to our Facebook page later on today. But in the video, it shows her carrying the baby into the waters. And the tears and the laughter at the same time. She's laughing because he's so happy. She's crying because he's dying. And what that was like for that family. Now, you don't need a tragic story like that, because all of our families have a lot to go through, don't they? We all have a lot to go through. And it doesn't matter if you're a singleton like me, or if you got, a family of 20. We all have stuff in life, right? So I think we just need to take a step back and say to one another, let's just decide right now that we as a church community, rather than judge everybody all the time about their parenting decisions or their family decisions or their lifestyle decisions, rather than judging one another all the time, why don't we just recognize that we all have horrible stuff we have to go through from time to time, and just decide we're going to support each other? Why don't we just decide that we're going to be one another's best and first cheerleader? Amen, right?
Amen.
Don't we need that? Don't we live in a culture that needs encouragement? Don't we live in a culture that needs people to come alongside us and say, you can do this. You will make it through. It will be all right. We're right here next to you. So dear church, that is my message for today. Rather than spend our time judging one another, rather than spending our time deciding which fathers are doing it right, which mothers are getting it right, and which families are the good ones and the bad ones, let's just decide we're going to help one another by being encouragers. And that's really what Father's Day and Mother's Day are about, right? That one time a year when we turn to the people who care for us, the fathers, the mothers, the father-like, the mother-like, and we say, good job, good job. Be encouraged. You're doing the best you can. And that, once we start encouraging one another, who knows, maybe we can stem the tide of negativity that seems to permeate everything we do in American life right now. Let's just decide today to encourage one another and to love each other and to care for each other the way we should. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.